Alright YouTube, in this video we are going to create HTML editor. You can see top there are buttons and these are the headings along with the Fontawesome Icons. This is a subheading and these are the icons. If you wish to add, you can add in the editable portion. You'll get the source code in the description. In this video we are going to focus only on the JavaScript. I have created this project using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We will focus most on the JavaScript, but I will explain how I have created the HTML and how I have used the CSS. Now you will get the source code in the description. Now let me forward it. If you wish to add, you can add a link as well. Now you can see I'm going to add the heading. Let's add one. Let's create from scratch. Let me remove all of it and show you how I have added it. Now click the heading you would like to add and name the heading as we will use it as thermometer. Now we are going to create the subheading. Click on the subheading. Now this would be in the subheading. Click on a subheading and replace the text. And now let's create a paragraph. Click on the paragraph. Before I would like to show how the icons would look like. You can add address, you can add phone, and you can add the email. Let me forward it. And you will get the source code in the description, which will be in this zip format. I'm going to extract it and show you how I have used. Fine, this is a file you will get after extraction. You will get one HTML, one CSS and JavaScript. Let me open the JavaScript file in Visual Studio Code, and you can see the button. Each button is inside the li. So inside the li we have a button, and please note each button has a id. This id plays important role over here. Let's get all the id in the notepad so that we can call it in the JavaScript. As you see, each button has unique functionality and each of them has the unique id. Let me forward it. And I have added two drop downs. The one is for the icons and the second one is for the heading. Now let me remove all the CSS, all the JavaScript, and start from scratch. Now the very first thing what we are going to do is we are going to get all the buttons. To get all the buttons in the HTML, we would use the query selector. Document.query selector. Let's check before our JavaScript file is properly loaded. It's by making it alert. You can see it is properly working. If you want your JavaScript file to load after the HTML, add the keyword defer, or else you have to add window.addListener load. So in this simple HTML, I have added the defer keyword, but in your project make sure to add these codes, JavaScript codes, inside the listener, inside the event listener load on window. Fine. Now let's get the button, all the button using the query selector all. If I console it and show you, you will get the node list. And by getting the button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get each button. To get each button from the node list, I will be using forEach loop over here. You can see now it's not working. Let me refresh it. You can see there are 18 buttons. If I click on the node list, it will open one by one, starting from 0 and ending in 17. If I select each of them, each of them is getting highlighted. Now, as I said, it's in the node list. To access one by one, we will be using forEach loop. The reason for using forEach loop is I can get one by one and I can perform some operation. The operation here, I would be getting the ID of the button and I will perform accordingly. Now let me display all the ID by running forEach loop on the console message. If you refresh, you'll see the ID has shown up. Now you can see, just by passing btn you are getting the input field, so button, all the buttons. If you pass btn.id, you're getting the id of the button. So we're going to check if, before that, we want to add listener. The add event listener is simply the click. When I click on the button, I want a function to get executed. So instead of writing 18 add event listener, I'm just writing one add event listener on the for each loop. This for each loop will apply for all the button inside. So as we know, button.id will give you the id of the button. If the first button is bold, let's get our bold. If it is bold, what we want to do is we want to execute a command on the editable div, and that document dot execute command, it will have three parameters. The first one is simply the command. Before that, what is this document? This document is simply the div. Not only the div with proper attribute contentable, content editable, and this div document is simply donates to content editable. Now let's get into the command. The first command, it will have three argument. Let me get into the official function, official documentation, document.exe command. It has some legal command, bold, like let's start from bold. And the second one, we have to pass false. And the third one is simply the null. And in this tutorial we are going to see, if you wish to change, if I type something and click on the button, select it and click on the button, you can see it has changed to bold. It is happening because of the command execute command, exec command. Fine. The same way we are going to check each button with id. If the id matches, we are going to execute the command. For bold, it's simply bold. For italic, it is simply italic. Let's check the command. You can see there is the italic option over here. You have to add the italic over here. Now the first one is bold, the second one is italic. First select and click on the bold, it will get into bold. If you select the italic, it is now italic. Now let's add the same thing to align left and align center. This is simply the id which I am showing in the notepad, but the command for that is justify left. And let me do it for align center as well. And the legal command for execute command, the legal code for execute command is simply justify center. So you will get in the browser, you can see it's on the top. Just copy and paste it and give it as a argument, first argument to the execute command. The first one is bold, the second button is italic, and the third and fourth button will align your text center or text left. Let me make it bold, it will be bold. Let me make it italic, let me make it left first, center first, and then let me make it left. The third one is simply the list item, unordered list. I don't want the unordered list, I'm going to make it ordered list because we have already one unordered list over here. Let me make it an ordered list. This is the id, and the legal command for that is insert ordered list. So we know we are getting the pointer, hand pointer, finger on the text field. So how I'm getting it, I have simply made the css of it. You can see, if you type ordered list, I have given the Fontawesome hex code to it, and you can, let me show you. You can see this is the pseudo element. I have given content, the hex code for the finger, and the font family. Fine. If you click on the pointer, you can see you are getting the list item, which is ordered list. OL, you can see it's ordered list, and you're getting the before pseudo element, which is in the CSS. That means your CSS is dynamically loading along with the page. So whatever you want, you can give your proper CSS and JS proper styles to it. And talking about style, you can give the style to the paragraph as well. We are going to insert the HTML. When I click on the paragraph icon, I want the custom HTML to get pasted on the content editable div. So I would be passing the first parameter as insert HTML, and the third is simply the value of it. The value I'm going to use, since I'm using the HTML code, I'm using the backtick, not the double quotes or the single quotes, it's the backtick. Now insert your text. Let me forward it. So I'm going to add a class change font, and I'm going to change the font of it to show that it is dynamically getting added. The CSS is also getting changed. If you get into the console, you can see the class change font is added, and the CSS also loads for it. Likewise, you can give your custom HTML and custom CSS using the execute command. Now let's paste the text paragraph. If you see, the whole paragraph will be inside the paragraph tag, since I have only replaced the text insert into the thermometer description. Now we are going to link it. The link, same way, there is a command called create link for the execute command, and the third argument, it will accept the URL. As you know, the link is simply the URL. So we would be getting the URL on using the prompt in JavaScript. Like alert, there is a prompt. If you let me show you, let me store this into a URL. You would get an alert box with the input field. If you click on the link, you can see enter the URL along with the text field. If you pass the second text field, it is a placeholder for the input field. It would be simply http://www. So if you refresh and click on the link, you can see enter the text field, and the input field is getting pre-filled with the placeholder. Now type something, select it, and click on the link and give the link as google.com. Click OK, it will get added in the console or in the inspector. You can see href is simply the www.google.com. If you wish to open, you can right click and open it. Now we have added the link. Now to remove the link, it is the same way, and the command for it is unlink, and we don't have to pass URL for this. So instead of the URL, it would be null. Let me show you, let me create a link for you and delink it. Now you can see the link is added. Let me check in the Chrome inspector, and it shows link has been added. Now let me unlink it. If you unlink it, it will go away. Now it's simply inside the div, our content editable div. Next thing, we are going to do the undo and redo. Just like Ctrl Z and Ctrl Y in the keyboard, the same option we would get using undo and redo command. Let me forward it. You can see some of the thing I have formatted it. And let me link again, and it will be linked. Now if you undo and redo, it will be like Control X and Control Y. Control Z is for undo and Control Y is for redo. Now undo and redo is working fine. Now it's time to add the HTML heading. You can see I'm undoing it. Now it's time for the heading. The same way we are going to add, we will not be inside the, I'm going to show you the other option, that is we are going to call individual element. document.getElement by id. We're going to get the id of the heading, which is inside the drop down. Let me store it into a variable, and we are going to add listener to it. So if you don't write for each, you have to write these number lines of code every time, and I would be showing how to create it now. Now the second parameter, when I click on it, what I need to do is I need to add an HTML. To add the HTML, there is a code called insert HTML, and in place of p tag, I would be adding the heading. Let me make it h3, and inside the h3, since we are using Fontawesome, you can use Fontawesome to it inside the h3. So let me get the Fontawesome on the HTML new.html. You can see this is the Fontawesome. Let me copy it and paste it. You can see I'm going to add a class to it, class of heading, which I have already defined in the CSS. That is the reason why we got some height, font size, and border to it. So if you click on the type one, the class heading will get added to it. Let me see. It is not getting added. It is because, let me check the error for it. This is for the JavaScript part. We don't want for this tutorial. Let me remove it. This text center is simply will align it to the center. The margin bottom is simply would be of 3 rem. Sorry, 1.5 rem. Now I have already defined these three. Now if you see, if you click on it, the heading is getting with the CSS along with the Fontawesome. The same way we are going to style the second heading, and this second heading will be the same thing with just the Fontawesome icon different. Now let me forward it. Now it's time for the subheading. The subheading is also the same. We have to get the element using the ID and store it into a variable, and this variable we are going to add listener to it, and inside the listener the second argument would be the execute. We are going to use the execute command, and this execute command will simply have insert HTML. We have already we have done everything. Let me make it subheading. Just replace the text. Let me create a paragraph. Click on the paragraph first and replace the text. Now let's create some links. Let me give the URL to the link. Just by clicking the link icon, you can give your own link, chapter1.com. Fine. Now if you wish to add another paragraph, you can add it. Let me add another paragraph. Click on the paragraph, replace the text, and now let's add the address icon, phone icon, and email icon.